I'm excited to have you on the call tonight. Can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Wale Akintaya. I would consider myself as evolving local developer slash real estate investor. So, why I use that term is because prior to this year, I was more focused towards the investing side. I was more of a landlord. So, I've
Yeah.
invested in multifamily syndication deals. So, I've never really dabbled specifically in the development side by myself. So, this year was like a jump into the frying pan. Right? Let's just put it that way. That's why I use the word like an emerging or growing local developer because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of growing pains,
Mhm.
and that's part of what brought me to this program, and it's what has been so helpful in my own knowledge base. So it's very different when you are a investor. So you're giving somebody money to fund their own deals
Yes.
versus when you're actually now the boots on ground. There's a whole lot of things that you need to think about, not just financing, but contractor management, even just dealing with the county, all these nuances that are
Yeah.
typically kept away from you by whoever you're collaborating with on development side.
What challenges were you facing in securing funding for your real estate deals prior to? I know you funded other people's deals, but when it came to your own deal, did you have any challenges or like what? How did you?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I would answer that in two ways. So the first challenge was more of credibility. When you're funding other people's deals, it's your money.
Right.
You get to set the tone, the appetite of risk, and that impacts the interest rates you give to such person. But when it's you now on the other side, your options are very limited. So more often you are at the mercy of hard money lenders.
Mm-hmm.
And with hard money lenders, you are scraping at the bottom of the barrel. So you're not getting the best financing option. For my first project, the financing terms I got were quite egregious. So I was like 3.3 and a half points origination fee. You're
Right.
looking at interest rates of 14%. So that was quite a shock for me. As somebody who has funded deals, I knew just from the beginning that these numbers are not sustainable or
Mm-hmm.
scalable over
Mm-hmm.
time. So that
Yeah.
was the first challenge. And then in the real estate business, it's very relationship driven. In order to access what I will call the better, like private money lenders or credit unions, you need to have almost like mentors or people that can vouch for you
Yeah.
or are willing to take a risk on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I
Yeah.
think that was another challenge that I had as well. It's outside of just sourcing money from, I would call it families and friends, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still not enough
Right.
because it can work when you're doing one deal, but if in my own case where I was doing about 4 or 5 deals this year, it was quite challenging. And so then it's okay, what are my other financial options?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. How the strategies and support provided in the program help you in terms of securing funding?
Oh, that's a very excellent question. So one, the first thing I wasn't even aware of was private lending. I have heard about it, and these are things that people would talk about, but I thought it was the ability to access that was it was like challenging and it seemed scary. Okay, so you're working with a private lender. Does
Mm.
this mean all of a sudden now they're going to be very invasive in your life and your personal credit? There was a mystery to it for me specifically, I would say.
Exactly.
And one of the things that this program did was to demystify that process. I remember when you and I spoke specifically and you introduced me to the different private money lending options. What that did for me was specifically realize that the cost savings I could just gain on a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give a specific example.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to having conversations with you, the hard money lender that I had was working with was charging me about, I think at that time I would say about 13% annual interest rate, 2.5% origination fee. And
Yeah.
then when had that conversation about private money lending, the individual that I spoke to told me I could reduce my origination fee to almost 1 percentage point. Now,
Mm-hmm.
to anyone out there, that 2% might not look like a lot, but multiply 2% by $600,000, that's 12K. That's a lot of money. That's
Yeah.
profit that that can return to you. So
Yeah.
saving money on the origination fee, that's that. Also, what was Another thing that helped me in my case is because I had a volume of projects, the ability to access that private lender. Some private lenders may require you to do 8 to 10 projects, but the ones that at least introduced me to, as long as I had 4 projects on my belt, which is what I had, they were willing to work with me. And they
Right.
were also willing to take risk with me because typically you would have to fill out a personal financial statement. So if you have a certain net worth, I'm just going to use arbitrary number. So let's say if you have a net worth of 500,000. Some private lenders would be willing to leverage that net worth
Yeah.
four
Yeah.
times. So that's $2 million. So now think about it. Instead of you thinking about your deals as, okay, every time I want to do each project, I have to go talk to a hard money lender. We have to look at, are you going to give me 90% loan to cost? Are
Hmm.
you going to do, what's the ARV, 75%? And the thing is, and I'll call this out, this was one thing I noticed with my own projects was depending on the neighborhood,
Right.
the ARV that the lender will give you will change and the deposit that is required will change. So for example, I had a Baltimore project where I had to bring 20% down and the money they were willing to give me was only, if I recollect, 70% of the ARV. Now with a private lender, that's you don't have these sort of conversations. It's you have this once you've gone through sort of their screening, you have
Yeah.
access to this line of credit, and
Credit.
that allows you to then be able to quickly finance your projects and get the ball rolling. And I'm sure with the more, I'm definitely going to be using this next year. With more projects that you get on the belt, you can get better terms and you have access to a larger amount of money to
Mm.
use for your
Yeah.
deals
Yeah.
itself. But
Yeah.
that knowledge has tremendously changed the way I am going to structure my deals going forward.
And that was actually what I was going to ask you, which you've answered. Like you having access to funding, how has that changed your ability to invest and grow your business?
Outside of just speed of doing deals,
Right.
that's one. The second one would be the scale at which I can think of doing deals and the money required to fund those deals. I'm just going to use an example. In the case, I'm going through the application process, but the private lender I'm talking to is going to give me access to about $2 million. So with $2 million, I can think about doing bigger projects. So like
Right.
bigger build outs. So in
Right.
my case, for example, the next project that I'm subsequently thinking of doing, before I would have capped myself to an acquisition price of maybe 600 to 650,000. Now I am leaning towards something in a higher price point, so 800,000 with the goal that, okay, I can target properties that have ARVs around like the 1.5 to 1.6 million range. Because once you build the muscle to do, call it, once you have a construction budget of $200,000, you start thinking, okay, how can I just kind of scale this out? The access to this private lender has definitely helped out for sure. I would say that. And between me and my partners, we're thinking like, okay, how do we take this 2 million and start thinking about more bigger projects and really being even instead of doing 5 projects, can we just do 2 good projects that really
Yeah.
give us better returns for our money? So
Absolutely.
it's less fees.
Yeah.
So think about it, and I'll give you I think the way to quantify it is I did 5 deals this year, assuming I was paid in private money, sorry, hard money lending origination fee $10,000 per deal.
Right.
Now I've spent $50,000 in paying a hard money lender.
Yeah.
I'm going to just drop that off the bat. So I'll probably save about $30,000. That's money that comes back to me that I can use to, whether it's on my rehabs or even put in as a down payment to subsequent projects. So these are like the gains you have or
Hmm.
the access that you have to.
All right, so now let's talk about contractor management. I know
Yes.
everybody has, it's the big thing in real estate is like, how do you find good contractors? How do you manage them? Let's talk about how difficult was it to find a good and reasonable price contractor? And what was your biggest struggle with contractor management before meeting me and joining the program and all that?
Yeah, sure. So that's a very important segment in any sort of real estate project because that's the difference between having your project delivered on time and at whatever estimated budget or cost that you had. First of all, my contractor management was, let's just say, extremely painful. One of my projects I had to fire. I ended up going over budget by about $50,000
Mm,
and over the estimated time just because my contractor was extremely incompetent.
mm,
The competency was not just by like their skills, it was also just how they even manage their workers.
yeah.
So that was the first thing that I dealt with. So I will put my contractors prior to the program into three buckets. Contractor A is very good at what he does, but moves at a slow pace. So,
Mm,
meaning he cannot work with other subs in that project.
right.
Contractor B is very good at what he does, moves at a fast pace, but is very expensive.
Mm.
Then I'll put the third bucket is contractor C, extremely incompetent, moves at a slow pace, and costs you so much money.
Funny.
And so these are the things I was dealing with prior to the program. And so that's just one segment. The other segment that I also dealing with was just even just dealing with the county, whatever inspections you have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with.
Mm-hmm.
Not all contractors are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
The being a part of this program, what it has done, the first gain that I had was working with people that I experienced with your local county officials. I can't stress that enough. And so, assuming you have a contractor in the buckets A and B, which is they are extremely good, but they are either expensive or not expensive, but they move slow. If they
Right.
don't have experience working with the county, forget all that will be your biggest bottleneck. For example, when you introduced me to Alana, the framer, one of the things that just struck me was the fact that he had worked with big builders within our
Right.
area. He was familiar. He told me where one of my properties was located. He had worked with one of the developers there. And I know when I drive past the house, I was like, wow, okay, if this guy has done this, I have a high degree of confidence that he understands who the county officials are, what they're looking for, and
Mm-hmm.
how to do that. So that
Mm-hmm.
was just something that just helped me out a lot. Not so just that familiarity with the county. The second thing was even pricing. I was able to see just savings. So not just that, for example, if I get a quote from a framer that is $40,000 with the people that you've pair me with, and have worked with you in the past, I just saw like immediate savings of 20%. So that's another element that was extremely helpful.
Right.
And then the other one I will add, which that I think is also important, is the ability to work with other subcontractors. That's
Mm-hmm.
another key thing because one of my projects, I specifically remember my sub was just not getting along with
Mm-hmm.
the HVAC guy.
Oh, wow.
The HVAC guy was really good. Was he gave me a quote for my DC project for 12,000. My sub and the HVAC guy, you would think that there's no language barrier. So that was at least that's a good thing. You would think that because they both speak Spanish and you will put them on a phone call and say, okay, you guys should talk to each other, they'll be able to integrate. No, I found myself just doing another project management 101. At one point in time, I texted the guy and I was like, have you reached out to this HVAC guy? The guy was like, I called him, but he's not answering. I
Mm.
called the HVAC guy. The HVAC guy is, what is he saying? He hasn't called me. I lost like 2 weeks of project time.
Wow.
This essentially pushed my DC project, like my schedule. I was 1 month behind schedule. So that was something that
Wow.
like I was experiencing at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I'm happy to say that at least now with the contractors that I'm currently working with, that
Mm-hmm.
as a result of just being in this program, it's not been the case. In fact, they have my current sub right now is forced to step his game up because he knows the guy is working with.
Yeah.
He's all about his business.
Yeah.
Like right now, I am the one, my sub, the frame I'm using is tensioning my sub that is doing my footings and excavation too. Hey, when are you going to get me this thing? My guys have to be here. I'm paying them from out of town. So now the guy has to think through
Mm.
how he's also going to get his subs as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's one another benefit I had. And I think one that I will touch on is even the way you think about supplies.
Mm-hmm.
I will call that out specifically. So just working with you and the relationships you have curated with whether it's Home Depot or other vendors. I've just benefited from it. If lumber prices are $2 or $3 per feet, I'm getting it at 10 to 20% off. I would really want to stress to someone that part of what helps you do very well in real estate is that mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
And that mentorship may not, it may not feel like it has value to you immediately. But the thing is, for example, if I have a problem with the framer you introduced me to, it's very easy for me to sit down and just call you and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, look, Fola, look, oh, this guy is not responding to me, or this
Right.
price is easier. And because that guy has worked with you over a long period and he's thought about the projects he's done,
Yeah.
and because the industry is a small space, that's another thing that people don't
Yeah.
realize is that it's a very small space.
Yeah.
So, like now, this is my contractor I fired in Baltimore. I can never, if anybody just mentions the guy's name, I'll just be like, look, if you want to go and waste money, go yeah. Do you understand my point? So, these
Yeah.
are the kind of things that people need to be aware of, that the mentorship is really key. It's not just saving you money,
Right.
having your projects land on time, but it's also making sure that you have the ability, you have access to information to avoid some of the pitfalls that previous developers within your space have had,
Exactly.
right? So now, even just think about my recent project that I'm about to work on,
Mm-hmm.
and you and I were having a conversations about build out cost. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm thinking this build out with this framing and
Yeah.
everything will cost like $170,000. And I'm like, okay, for like you've worked on so many of these projects,
Right.
soundboarding of you, does that seem right? You're like, I think you should lean to more of 190 or this because you
Right.
need to think about this.
Right.
That alone just helps me. That $20,000 difference
Right.
helps me when I go and negotiate the acquisition price, because now I'll go to
Exactly.
the seller of the home and say, hey, look, this is not, this price won't work because here are the things that need to happen for me to be able to create value,
Exactly.
and it actually saved me from what I would call like
Overpaying.
projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, projects that seemingly look good based
Yep.
on your market. But
Yeah.
then when you, in your mind, you would, yeah, okay, I think I can make $80,000. But
Right.
then I may be underestimating the time it takes to get a permit,
Yes.
the
Yes.
building costs. So if I think the project will be 5 months,
Yeah.
just talking to you, you can tell me, look, this year, just add another 3 months. Three
Mm-hmm.
months at whatever number it is, 15,000. That 80,000 now is looking more like
Like, yeah.
65,000. And
Yeah.
then when you say, okay, a number takes 6 weeks. Oh, somebody's telling you 4 weeks, go and check that thing. That's
Right.
6 weeks. That's another 1 month. So these are the little nuanced things that the mentorship, these micro details is what makes what might feel like a guaranteed 80,000 to be more like a 20,000 profit. And then you start
Yeah.
asking yourself, okay, I'm
Yeah.
doing all this stress.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Do you understand?
Right.
And it
Right.
helps you know how to walk away from a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful. I know you've given all the great examples and knowing what to look out for when you're looking at a project because yeah,
yeah,
sometimes you can come around and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make 80,000 off of this deal, and then you miss one or two things, and that 80,000 becomes 30,000 or it becomes 60,000. So that's what mentorship is all about, which is about compressing time and like you said, not making the same mistakes that I made when I first started out. I'm
yeah.
helping you compress time, which is absolutely important. I just want you to talk about, and we're going to round up here, but I just want you to talk about the results that you've seen in terms of your timeline. I know you've talked about cost. And then
Yeah.
also, what would you say to someone considering joining the program and they're feeling unsure if it's the right fit for them or not? What would your advice be based on everything that we've just talked about and your experience?
Yeah, sure. So just to make sure that I captured all your questions correctly. So timelines, you're referring to specific, like how long have I seen my projects are they being completed on time pre-joining the program versus
Right,
post-joining the program? And
right.
then the second question being what advice do I have to somebody who has hesitations about joining the program? Okay.
Mhm.
So let me speak about timeline. Uh, One of the things that this program has done realistically is it has made me be more conservative with my project timeline. So I'll give you a very good example of the Kensington project I'm working on right now. If I had joined this program prior to acquiring that asset, and we had the conversations we eventually had in
Mm-hmm.
the program,
Mm-hmm.
I would not have anticipated 5 months for my timeline. I
Mm-hmm.
would have conservatively estimated like 7.5 months. And
Right.
what that would have done is that would have the way I put together my numbers, I had modeled my numbers on worst case scenario 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm looking at an additional month and a half when I factor in all the delays I've had with permits,
Right.
architecture. I remember you and I were talking about architects.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, if I'm using the best architect in town, this guy will release my drawings in 2 weeks.
Right.
This
Right.
guy wasted, I basically lost an additional 4 weeks. So with the knowledge that I know and going forward with subsequent projects, I think I'll be able to properly quantify the actual time it would take to do any sort of future projects I'm doing. So
Mm-hmm.
now with this deal that I'm looking to acquire, even though it's a simple modification, I'm just reframing the second floor and making cosmetic updates to the first floor. Ideally, I'm anticipating 7 months, right? And that has helped me level set how I want my financing when talking to the lenders,
Right.
even just engaging the contractors, the architect.
Right.
And it's also helped reduce the stress level for me. So I don't have this anxiety about, okay, I thought 4 months. Now this thing is 1 month over. There's a
Yeah.
scope creep. So that's I would say that's been the biggest impact is managing the project within a reasonable time frame. It's really helped me get a good sense of if I'm working in different areas. If I were to come into DC right now and do a full gut with a build that I
Mm-hmm.
just know that I have to be ready for 8 months, minimum 8 to 9 months,
Yep.
right? I wouldn't have access to that information. I would have learned that after I went in,
Hard way.
go the hard way, paid school fees,
Yeah.
dealing with all these variables, and then so that's that. And then to touch on your last question on someone having hesitant to join the program, here's what I'll say to such a person. Real estate is it's when I want to be very careful about this. Real estate is it's very rewarding. It's also, as you acquire more experience,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes capital intensive,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a high upside.
Right.
If you're going to if you're going to build a business that is scalable over time, I think mentorship is very important. There is a strong correlation between people who are successful in any space and their relationship to a specific mentor.
Yeah.
What that just does is a lot of the mistakes you will make, you would just that you would make just doing it on your own, you would avoid that. So, for example, when you and I were talking, I thought it was just you read books, you watch videos. I thought, okay, yeah, I can do 5 projects in 5 different locations.
Mm-hmm.
After you and I talked, I know when you said, look, why don't you just focus on one area? I get it. But that's it's not just you telling me, it's the school fees I paid from driving to 5 different locations, being stressed out,
Yeah.
coordinating logistics
Right.
across 5 different Home Depot centers. That is the if assuming I had started this, had these conversations in the program prior to doing any of my project, I would have said, no,
Right.
no, no, okay, I'm just going to focus in either Montgomery County,
Yep.
PG County, and my whole framework would be very different, which is what I am doing next year. I've decided to focus on one area
Yep.
and avoid these sort of, so
But here
that's one
today.
thing
Yeah.
these sort of mentorship programs do to you. That's one. Two, it's also just the people that you get to meet as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? You start interacting with other developers in your space that have a wealth of experience through your mentor. And what that does is it gives you confidence and it also improves addresses your knowledge gap, right?
Yep.
I don't know about anyone, but I personally do not want to lose $100,000 to gain knowledge. I would rather pay whether it's 10,000, 20,000 to gain knowledge that sets me at a place where I'm able to really focus on the things that matter in the business. Okay, how do I create a process out of this? I remember when you and I were talking, I started saying to myself, oh, wow, if has a virtual assistant and I'm trying to scale to the place where she's getting to,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way I can split myself into five people. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, how do I start creating the framework where I'm in a position to take where at the point where I start scaling, if I'm doing 5 projects at a go, I can think about, okay, do I put together the infrastructure for a virtual assistant? What
Mm-hmm.
do I really want these virtual assistants to do? How
Mm-hmm.
do I want to make sure that I have this virtual assistant can coordinate with all my vendors and understand
Right.
this is the process I have set for them. Even
Right.
just things are like PO, delivery schedules, and coordinating between whoever your supplier is and your contractors. So there's
Mm-hmm.
just these are things that people often assume that you have the ability to do. Now, if that's an experience you've acquired in whatever line of work, that's fine, but still, you're still going to pay some sort of cost,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's through just real hands-on, putting your hand and learning project by project, which was my case until I joined the program, to now realizing that, look, there's nothing, you don't lose value leaning on the knowledge and the experience of someone that has already done it
Yeah.
50 times, 100
Yes.
times. Like it's not the same.
Yep.
Like your handyman is not your subcontractor. It's just this sort of things.
Yep.
That guy that comes that does your HVAC when
Yep.
it breaks in your house, it's not the same guy you call now when you are fixing a property in a different location,
Yep.
especially if you are working on multiple sites. That guy might be good with your mini HVAC, but it's on your project that he's experimenting, and you don't have that luxury. Do you understand? For that experimentation, or even just realizing like some of your subs are just good at certain things. This my Kensington project. My sub is good at like interior work, but once I have somebody that can do cement, I'm like, the pain that I'm going through now dealing with this is person that is doing cement work. I'm just like, man, I thought I'd recommended this guy. I should have just, why am I stressing? Like, why am I trying to reinvent the wheel?
Will.
Like that $3,000 I think I might save.
Yeah.
It's nothing compared to the headache I have chasing this guy's
Yeah.
cement guy that is telling me all these stories. There's a fidelity that has been done by people who have been in this industry longer than you have.
Mm-hmm.
And leaning on that just makes your projects run better.
Right.
It helps with even just your financing when you're talking to your banks. When they start seeing that you put out a quality product, you're able to sell on time, and you're professional, they don't treat you like any kind of like just individual on the streets just coming and they have money to burn.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
You're welcome, Fola. You're welcome.
for joining me this evening. It was very insightful. I hope everyone can learn and glean from Wale. He's actually doing some amazing stuff.
I try.
Very,
Not at
very
your
proud
level
of
yet, but I am
Hey, but
growing.
we all start somewhere and you're going out, you're taking action, you're doing it because I see people talking about this all the time and then they end up not doing anything. But you're out there, you're doing it, you're making it happen. And yeah, the sky is the limit. So we're going to crush 2025. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. You've been extremely helpful for I think one of the things I always joke with my peers that, having a mentor saves you, especially someone that is just like a veteran. And when they're giving you, when they're putting you a game, it's just better to just quiet and just enjoy and just I like when I think about just our conversations, the things that you stimulate in my mind and how I think about any project. They're just blind spots that I'm unable to see that you
Right.
see, and
Right.
it just saves me from stress. My stress level has reduced significantly. That one I can tell you. Obviously, you still have the nuance of an
Yeah.
annoying contractor and all of that,
Yeah.
but those are
Always, every day.
those are housekeeping items. I call them.
Yeah.
It's just like cleaning your every day you wake up and you have to clean your living room. It just gets
Yeah.
dirty with time.
Yeah.
I call those housekeeping. This is
Yeah.
like structural issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Wale.
Hello, everyone. I wanted first of all just acknowledge the impact this program has had on my real estate journey. Going in, I had concerns because typically with a lot of these programs, you don't see any sort of measurable impact on your projects. But for me specifically, I have seen measurable impact. One, the cost of acquisition on materials has dramatically improved. So previously, for example, I was spending maybe $40,000 to $50,000 when it comes to framing. Through this program, I've been introduced to contractors that have brought that pricing down to somewhere between the $30,000 to $40,000 range. There's also just other benefits when it comes to pricing within across Home Depot. I'm seeing cost savings of somewhere between 10 to 15% when it comes to materials I order, whether it's plumbing materials, electrical. So I can definitely speak to the financial aspects from like vendor relationship. In addition to that, I've also just seen an impact to the speed and clarity at which I am able to get projects done. The previous contractors I was working with prior to joining this program, they were not very efficient with their work, or they were moving at a pace that was not beneficial to my timelines. The individuals that I have worked with through the relationship I have with Fola have helped me stay on schedule. If I have anticipated 4 weeks to complete my framing or a week and a half for my HVAC work, I'm able to meet those schedules because I'm working with contractors specifically that understand the importance of working on time and being very professional. I would say on the financing bit, I have definitely had cost savings. When I was working with hard money lenders, I was getting somewhere between 3 to 3.5% points on loans that I would typically take out. So imagine a scenario where you're working on a project and you're about to use $500,000 to fund your project and acquire the asset. That's $15,000. Working with lenders that are charging you a point and a half, that's a big savings. You're looking at about $10,000 that comes into my pocket and allows me to do other things as well. For folks who are out there and having reservations, I will strongly encourage you to lean into the knowledge and expertise of Fuller and her team. They are saving you from time that you will spend acquiring this knowledge in a very painful way, time and money, I would say. And for me, I've definitely seen the benefits, as I earlier mentioned. And I will encourage anyone that is serious about growing their real estate profession or business, they should take the time to participate in the program and learn. And it's definitely helpful for sure.